she was left to die. A sick little girl, trembling with fever, abandoned deep in the forest by the one man who was supposed to protect her, her own father. No coat, no food, no way home, just the darkness and her fading heartbeat. And no one came, until she did. A German shepherd once trained to save lives, now forgotten by the world, heard her cries. What happened next will restore your faith in humanity and in the silent miracles God still sends through animals. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you believe no child should be left behind, if you believe a dog's love can change a life, hit that subscribe button now, because what you're about to hear will stay with you forever. The town of Alder Creek, nestled at the edge of the Rocky Ridge National Park, was quiet that early November morning. A pale fog lingered over the hills like a shawl forgotten by time, while the last burnt orange leaves clung to maple branches, resisting the inevitable winter. The forest floor was damp with dew, and the air smelled of pine and old stories. It was the kind of place where secrets could vanish between the trees. A black luxury SUV crept along the winding back roads, its tinted windows reflecting nothing but gray sky. Behind the wheel sat Marcus Reed, a man of 42 with slicked-back dark blonde hair, a chiseled jaw, and expensive taste. In a navy wool coat and tailored jeans, he looked like he belonged on a real estate billboard rather than in the wilderness. His face was stoic, but a nervous tic played at the corner of his mouth. Beside him, in the back seat bundled in a soft blanket, sat Luna. Just 8 years old, the girl had delicate features, wide brown eyes rimmed with fatigue, and a persistent cough that rattled in her chest like dry paper. Her hair, once thick and wavy, was now thin from weeks of illness. Still, she smiled weakly as the forest came into view. "Daddy, is this the place you told me about?" she asked, her voice hoarse but filled with wonder. Marcus nodded, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "This is it, sweetheart. Nothing but fresh air, chirping birds, and peace for miles. Just what the doctor ordered." Luna looked out the window, mesmerized by the golden light slanting through the trees. She clutched a tiny, worn-out doll, a remnant from her earlier childhood, and whispered to it, "We're gonna feel better here." Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter. The doll hadn't been part of the plan. They drove until the asphalt gave way to gravel, and then to a narrow dirt path where no GPS dared go. Finally, he stopped beside a moss-covered boulder and turned off the engine. The silence that followed was thick. Marcus stepped out, walked around, and opened the rear door. "Come on, Luna, let's stretch those legs." She coughed hard but obeyed, wobbling slightly on her feet. He scooped her up into his arms and began walking deeper into the woods, his polished boots squelching in the mud. "This is fun," Luna said as she leaned her head against his chest. "Just the two of us." Marcus didn't respond. They walked until they reached a clearing near the edge of a slope where wildflowers, now wilted, used to bloom in summer. A fallen log rested beneath an old cedar tree. "Let's sit here a while," Marcus said. He gently set Luna down and unwrapped a bottle of water and a small packet of crackers from his coat. "Here, have some," he said, handing them to her. "I'm going to look around a bit, okay?" Luna nodded and munched quietly. She didn't notice how he kept glancing over his shoulder. "I'll be right back," he whispered, though more to himself than to her. Then he turned and walked away, faster with each step, until the woods swallowed him whole. Luna waited. Minutes passed. A squirrel chattered nearby and a woodpecker hammered high above. She finished the crackers and looked around. "Daddy?" she called, unsure at first, then louder. "Daddy!" The forest returned no answer. Only the wind moved. Panic began to seep into her bones, sharper than the cold air. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She stood up, stumbled forward, and screamed his name again. Nothing. Her breath turned to fog as evening shadows began to stretch across the forest floor. On the far side of Rocky Ridge, near Lake Emberleaf, a German shepherd was sniffing the stones along the bank. Sadie, 5 years old, was a strong, sable-colored female with alert amber eyes and a streak of silver along her flank, a scar from an avalanche rescue gone wrong. Once a proud member of the Montana Search and Rescue K-9 team, Sadie had been forced into early retirement after injuring her hip during a mission. Her handler, unable to afford her treatment after losing funding, left her at a rehabilitation center. But Sadie, loyal even in confusion, escaped into the wilderness she once worked in. Since then, she had survived alone, instinct ruling her days, but never forgetting the voice of command or the meaning of a cry for help. That afternoon, as she lapped from the lake's edge, the wind shifted. Her ears perked. A thin, desperate sound threaded through the trees, a child's voice. Sadie froze. Then slowly, with practiced precision, she turned toward the sound and began to run, each stride awakened by purpose long thought gone. Her breath fogged in bursts as her paws crunched over wet leaves and underbrush. Meanwhile, Marcus had returned to his SUV, wiping sweat from his brow. He pulled out his phone and called his ex-wife Lillian, a no-nonsense woman with sharp cheekbones and sharper instincts. "Hey," he said, injecting feigned cheer. "Just wanted to let you know Luna's been admitted to a special treatment retreat upstate. Very exclusive. No visitors allowed for a while, but they said isolation would help her lungs." On the other end, Lillian's silence was wary. "That doesn't sound like what we discussed," she said slowly. Marcus chuckled. "Trust me. It's best for everyone." And he hung up. Back in the forest, Sadie reached the edge of the clearing. Her sharp eyes spotted Luna curled beside the cedar log, shivering. Sadie approached cautiously, head low, tail still. Luna turned and gasped at the sight of the massive dog, but something in Sadie's gaze, deep, warm, unblinking, calmed her. "Hi," Luna whispered, barely audible. "Are you lost too?" Sadie sat down a few feet away, watching, waiting. Luna, trembling, reached out her hand. Sadie stepped forward, nose twitching, and gently nudged the girl's fingers. The warmth of that touch fur to skin was the first comfort Luna had felt in hours. The name Sadie had once been spoken with reverence by her former team. It had come from her handler's late daughter, a child who had dreamed of being a firefighter before cancer claimed her. Naming the dog Sadie was his tribute, his way of carrying her courage into every rescue. And now, in this dark forest, the name lived on, in purpose, in instinct, in salvation. The wind whispered through the high pines like a choir of ghosts as twilight folded over Rocky Ridge National Park. The forest, once golden under morning light, now darkened into solemn shades of blue and black. Cold crept in silently, curling around tree roots and brushing against the cheeks of a child alone. Luna lay curled beneath a cedar, arms wrapped tightly around her knees. Her breath came in shallow bursts, white against the night air. Her fever had worsened, and the small packet of crackers her father left behind had done nothing to ease the gnawing ache in her belly. Her doll had been dropped somewhere along the walk, and she hadn't even noticed. Tears dried on her cheeks like frost. Somewhere in the distance, a branch cracked, and Luna's heart froze. Her voice was too dry to scream, but instead of the imagined footsteps of a bear or a stranger, a shape emerged from the underbrush low to the ground, eyes reflecting amber in the dim light. It was Sadie. The German shepherd moved slowly, her paws silent on the mossy earth. Her thick sable coat, dusted with dried pine needles, seemed to shimmer under the moonlight. She paused a few feet away, watching the girl. Luna stared back, weak and unsure. Sadie took one step closer, then another, until her nose gently touched Luna's outstretched hand. The warmth startled her. Not just physical warmth, but something deeper comfort. You're not wild," Luna murmured. "You came back." Sadie sat beside her, pressing her body close to provide heat. She nuzzled Luna's shoulder and gave a low, encouraging bark. Luna, without knowing why, reached up and wrapped her arms around Sadie's neck. In that moment, the dog became her only certainty in a world that had turned cruel and unfamiliar. Sadie lay down, letting the girl rest against her side until her shivering eased. After several long minutes, Sadie stood up and looked toward the slope that led down the valley. Luna understood. "You want me to go with you?" she whispered. Sadie barked once, softly. Luna nodded, too exhausted to question the miracle. She climbed onto the dog's back, wrapping her arms around Sadie's thick neck. It was an awkward wait, but Sadie adjusted with a grunt and began her descent through the forest, careful, measured, and determined. Several miles away, a lone truck rolled along a dirt service road that curved around the boundary of the park. Behind the wheel was Ben Coleman, a 60-year-old retired construction worker turned long-haul driver. He had the build of someone who'd once been strong as steel beams, though time and solitude had softened his frame. His hair, once jet black, was now a mess of silver curls tucked under a faded red baseball cap. His flannel shirt was buttoned to the top, and his hands, calloused but gentle, gripped the wheel with practiced ease. Riding shotgun was Max, his 12-year-old beagle, a pudgy and lazy-eyed companion who snored more than he barked. Max had been with Ben ever since his wife passed away 5 years earlier, and they had developed the kind of quiet understanding only time can build. Ben hummed an old Johnny Cash tune as the truck climbed the ridge, headlights cutting through the fog like knives. That's when he saw it. A large animal darted across the road. He slammed the brakes, heart jumping. His headlights caught the impossible sight, a German shepherd, muscular, worn, purposeful, with a child clinging to its back. The truck skidded to a halt. Ben jumped out, gravel crunching under his boots. "Hey, whoa there!" he shouted, hands raised in surprise. Sadie didn't bolt. She stopped, ears twitching, eyes fixed on Ben. Luna stirred, barely conscious, her face flushed. "Help, please," she croaked. Max barked softly from the truck. Ben approached slowly. "Okay, girl," he said to Sadie. "You brought her here, didn't you?" The dog held his gaze. Then, without a word, she stepped forward, allowing Ben to take Luna into his arms. She was burning up. Ben quickly opened the passenger door, laying Luna gently on the seat and grabbing a wool blanket from the back. Max jumped into the back seat, sniffing the air and then Luna's forehead before gently licking it. Sadie climbed in after, sitting at Luna's feet, eyes still locked on the child. "You're not going anywhere, are you?" Ben muttered. "Good." Back on the road, Ben made a decision. Instead of heading into town directly, he turned the truck toward the outskirts of River Glen, a rural area where his old friend Diane ran a dog rescue and rehab ranch. Diane Monroe was in her mid-50s, tall and angular, with a long gray braid and the kind of voice that didn't rise often. But when it did, people listened. A former vet tech, she'd devoted her later years to rescuing working dogs who had been abandoned after injuries or retirement. Ben trusted her more than any doctor. As they drove, Luna stirred. "Where's my dad?" she whispered. Ben hesitated. "We're going to get you safe first, sweetie. Then we'll figure everything out." Luna's eyes welled with tears, but she nodded. Max curled beside her, offering warmth. Ben glanced at Sadie in the rearview mirror. "What's your name, girl?" he asked gently. The dog tilted her head. "No collar, no tags. But you've seen pain. You've saved lives before, haven't you?" He reached into his glove box, pulled out a protein bar, and tossed it back to Sadie. She caught it midair, chewed slowly, then rested her head on the seat next to Luna. "You look like a Sadie," Ben muttered. "Tough, smart, with a heart too big for this world." The dog didn't flinch. From then on, that was her name. They arrived at Diane's ranch just past midnight, headlights cutting through fog as a dozen dogs barked in the distance. Diane stepped out onto the porch, robe and boots on, holding a flashlight. Her face tightened when she saw Ben carrying a child. "What the hell happened?" she asked, already ushering them inside. As Ben laid Luna on the couch and explained the situation, Diane checked the girl's temperature. "She's running hot. She needs fluids and rest. We'll keep her stable till morning, then call the doctor." Sadie sat beside the couch, unmoving, alert. Diane looked at her and raised a brow. "Is she yours?" "Not exactly," Ben said. "More like, she's the one who found the kid." Diane stared at the dog. "That makes two of us who owe her big." Morning at the Monroe Rescue Ranch began not with an alarm, but with the sound of dogs barking in harmony with roosters crowing across the valley. The first light of dawn poured over the hills of River Glen, washing the fields in hues of golden rose and dew-speckled green. Inside the warm farmhouse nestled at the heart of the property, Luna stirred beneath a handmade quilt, her cheeks no longer flushed with fever but tinted with the soft pink of returning health. She opened her eyes to see Max snoring lightly at her feet, and Sadie resting nearby with her head on her crossed paws, one ear still alert even in sleep. Diane Monroe stood at the kitchen window, sipping her black coffee in a worn ceramic mug that read "Dog hair don't care." She was tall and weathered like a woman who had seen many lives pass through her care. Her long gray braid reached the middle of her back, and faint lines around her eyes marked years of laughter, loss, and quiet resilience. She wore denim overalls over a faded green flannel and had a small tattoo of a paw print on her forearm. Diane wasn't one for sentiment, but watching Luna gently stroke Sadie's fur stirred something maternal in her chest that she thought she'd buried long ago. Ben sat at the old oak dining table, scribbling notes in a small, spiral-bound notebook. He'd barely slept, too busy thinking through every detail Luna had shared during the night. "Diane," he said, eyes still fixed on the page. "She said her dad told her her mom died. But when I asked if she remembered a funeral or any photos, nothing. Just that her dad told her to never ask again." Diane turned slowly. Men who erase people from a child's life usually have something to hide. She crossed the room and opened a drawer. "Let's see what we can find." They began by reviewing the only documentation Luna had with her, an old backpack with a medical prescription bottle labeled Luna R, and a half-folded insurance card that had miraculously remained in its side pocket. Diane scanned the ID number into her laptop, eyes narrowing as the name Marcus Reed popped up. She clicked deeper. "Bingo," she muttered. Marcus Reed, age 42, owner of Reed West Construction, based out of Middleton, registered father of one child. No mention of the mother anywhere. That's unusual. Ben's lips tightened. She was erased on paper, just like in the girl's memory. Luna, now awake and sitting in a pile of warm blankets, looked up. "Are you talking about my dad?" Diane knelt beside her, her voice soft. "Sweetheart, do you remember your mom at all?" Luna shook her head. "Dad said she went to heaven when I was a baby, but I used to have dreams about a lady with brown eyes and a soft voice. I think she sang." Diane brushed Luna's hair aside. Sometimes dreams remember things better than people do. Later that afternoon, Diane took Luna outside to meet the other animals. The ranch was home to nearly 20 rescue dogs, mostly retired service animals and strays with good hearts. Luna wandered among them, giggling as a 3-legged Labrador named Rusty licked her hand and a tiny deaf border collie spun in excited circles. Sadie followed close behind, ever her silent guardian. As the sun rose higher, Diane told Luna stories of other children who had been saved by dogs of a golden retriever who pulled a boy from a frozen lake, a mutt that lay across a baby's crib during a tornado. Luna listened wide-eyed, her fingers tracing the scar on Sadie's flank. "I think God sent her," she whispered. Diane smiled. "I don't disagree." Meanwhile, Marcus Reed stared at his phone screen in his high-rise condo in Middleton. The image on social media showed a German shepherd standing protectively between a small girl and a wild coyote in the woods. The caption read, "Miracle dog saves abandoned child near River Glen." Marcus's face went pale. His hands trembled as he zoomed in. It was Luna alive. His carefully built lie, the secret he'd buried in a forest, had surfaced. Panic gripped him. He called a private investigator, a greasy man named Carl Dawes with slicked back hair and a gut built on bar food. "Find her. Bring her back. Quietly," Marcus ordered. "You'll be paid double." Carl nodded, already slipping a pistol into his truck's glove compartment. "Consider it done." That night, as Diane sat in her armchair reading beside the fireplace, Sadie barked once, sharp and low. Then again. Diane rose, walking to the window. A dark SUV idled at the end of the dirt road. "Ben," she called, "we've got company." Ben, who had just stepped out from the barn, narrowed his eyes and reached for his phone. Sadie stepped outside, ears high, stance wide. Max, slow but aware, stood at the doorway, growling low in his throat. As Carl approached the gate, Sadie let out a long, thunderous bark that echoed across the property. Within seconds, the other dogs joined in. Diane opened the gate just as the sheriff's car pulled up behind Carl's truck, lights flashing. The sheriff, Tom Alvarez, was a thick-built man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and a badge worn from years of service. His voice was calm but firm. "Mr. Dawes, I believe you're trespassing. Step away from the property." Carl's protest died on his lips as he saw the line of dogs behind the fence, Sadie at the front, unmoving, statuesque in the moonlight. Marcus's plan had failed. Days later, Marcus Reed sat in a holding cell, his face haggard, suit wrinkled. Sheriff Alvarez had just finished taking Luna's statement. "You know," the sheriff said to Marcus, "it's not the lies that buried you. It's that your daughter still had hope, and she found someone to believe her." Marcus didn't reply. He stared blankly at the concrete wall, no longer in control of anything. Back at the ranch, Luna sat on the porch swing with Sadie curled beside her. A woman with long chestnut hair and tear-filled eyes stepped out of a red sedan Marissa Lane, Luna's birth mother, 38 years old, slim, kind-faced, with a voice that trembled like wind chimes in a storm. She had been searching for her daughter since the day Marcus told her the child died in childbirth. But some truths don't stay buried. Luna looked up. Something in her heart stirred. The woman stepped forward and Luna whispered, "I know you." Marissa knelt and embraced her, sobbing, "I never stopped loving you." Ben and Diane watched from a distance, both misty-eyed. "Welcome home," Diane murmured. In the following weeks, Luna settled in with her mother in a small rented cabin not far from the ranch. But she returned every weekend to see Ben, Max, and especially Sadie. The town of River Glen held a small ceremony at the local town hall. Sadie was awarded a Medal of Civic Honor and dubbed Guardian of River Glen. Luna pinned it to her collar with shaking hands and whispered, "You're my angel." Sometimes when the world turns its back on the most innocent, when darkness closes in and hope seems lost, God sends help in the most unexpected forms. Not always through thunder or lightning, but through a silent guardian with 4 legs, a heart full of courage, and eyes that see pain we try to hide. Sadie wasn't just a dog, she was a miracle wrapped in fur, a living sign that love still exists in this world, even when humans fail. In our everyday lives, we may not all face the forests Luna faced, but we each carry moments of abandonment, fear, or loss. And sometimes the one who pulls us back into the light isn't who we expected. It could be a kind stranger, a loyal friend, or even a creature sent by grace. This story reminds us to never underestimate the quiet protectors around us and never stop believing that God's love can find us anywhere. If this story touched your heart, if you believe every child deserves love and every animal deserves dignity, please share this story with someone who needs hope. Leave a comment, hit the subscribe button, and join our growing family of believers in second chances. And if you believe in miracles, if you believe that God's angels sometimes walk or run on 4 paws, comment Amen below. May God bless you and protect you just as He sent Sadie to protect Luna.